And we should be live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back today to another session with Dental Shadowers. Today, we have a very exciting session with Paramount Dental Studio. I want to thank Paramount Dental Studio for joining today's session and giving us an insight of what it is like to be a dental technician. And on that note, the floor is yours, guys. Thank you.
Want me to kick it off, Rachel?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey guys, we're my name's Aries, and you'll hear from Rachel, Kathleen, and Eric. Tonight we want to tell you a little bit about the dental laboratory side. It's something that dentists work with on a daily basis. It's one of their closest partnerships, and it's also might be something that a lot of you might be interested in pursuing as well. If dentistry, if you're not 100% set on dentistry, so it's great to give you options to understand the industry. And we'll get right into it, describe a little bit about who we are, then what we do. We'll show you a little bit about the process designing, milling, staining, and glazing. Then we'll talk about some trends in the industry. So Rachel, do we have a slideshow that we can throw up?
Yes, it's the screen sharing is.
Is it like happening right now? Can they see it?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
You guys got to help me out. Where do I go to see which page I'm on? I go like, because Rachel, I'm looking straight at you. Oh, there we go. Hold on a second. I got it. It's all good. All right. So about us. So that's just a little picture that Paramount's probably got around 75, 80 people. That's just the sales and marketing. The customer service side went for just sort of like a retreat to the Outer Banks in North Carolina. We're in Charlottesville, Virginia. That's where that piece of the team is stationed. In Huntington Beach, California, where the manufacturing takes place. You'll hear from Eric, and that's where Eric is right now. He's our lead dental technician over in California. And so just a little bit about who we are, where we started. So Paramount Dental Studio and K2 Dental Arts, two companies there. They now act very closely together, sister companies. Paramount started in 1981, has been around for a very long time. K2 Dental Arts started in 2014. And the connection was Philip, so a friend of mine who from business school. Philip and I went to business school together and met there. He handles the manufacturing side in California, and he took it over Paramount from his father. And I run the sales and marketing, the administrative, the clinical problem solving portion out in Charlottesville, Virginia. And so the dental industry is going through a big change. You guys have probably seen it in your shadowing that it's going from analog to digital. It's probably the biggest change in dentistry that's happened in the last 50 years is the adoption of a whole range of technologies. One of the most important pieces of technology that's being adopted is called the Intraoral Scanner. It basically makes crowns better, faster, and cheaper. So in 2014, there was about 5% adoption rate of this technology. And now we're looking at maybe a 40% adoption rate, but I'm not necessarily sure what happened with COVID to the curve, but it was going to go almost like straight up, where everybody was going to start adopting it very soon. And I think that's still the case. We still see huge adoption rates even through COVID. We got really good at using this, at understanding the dentist side of things, not only the laboratory side of things. And so we understood how what the dentist was doing on their side helped them get the best use out of this piece of equipment, and then fabricated and produced a crown from this new piece of equipment, new CAD/CAM technology. And because we understood both sides, it gave us an edge in the marketplace and allowed us to be on the Inc. 500, allowed us to grow very quickly and bring on a lot of dentists during this really interesting time period, this transition from analog to digital. So I'll talk a little bit about what we do now. And we make crowns and we sell them to dentists. And so restoration, so general dentistry, the bread and butter of every dental practice where they make their money is in crown and bridge. It's not in hygiene, it's in crown and bridge. And they take their crown and bridge very seriously, as you probably know. And so very little room for error, very precise. Um, so we fabricate crowns and abutments, implants. You might be familiar with those. And we do it all with the new CAD/CAM software. So that the steps involved in that are um, designing, milling, and staining and glazing. Eric is going to go into the designing portion, which is um, uh, very complicated. A very complicated portion of it is a very high skilled portion of it that you might find pretty interesting. Um, at K2 Dental Arts and Paramount Dental Studio in the Charlottesville location, we can talk a little bit more about that. There's as a customer support role, but in the dental lab space, what you see is it's not necessarily your average customer support. It's not like, it's more of a high level clinical problem solving because you get anywhere from very basic, easy one like problems that dentists will have with a set and defined answers, like you want to do A, B, or C, doctor, which one is it? To a very complicated, lengthy discussion with the doctor about what this patient really wants to do and how they want to have their smile and restructure the whole mouth. And so it goes from very easy to very complicated. And it's almost like you are a partner with the doctor, and you're giving the doctor advice, because the doctor, dentists, any professionals in general, any specialist loves to talk to another specialist. And so you're really giving advice to the doctors about a very niche and specific area. And so that is probably our main function, I would say. And so we see tons of problems every day. We see all the big problems, all the frequent problems that you see in dentistry, and that comes up. And so 1 month at K2 and Paramount, you'll see tens of thousands of cases that roll through, and you get to see all the issues that could come up in a dental practice and what could go wrong, what to do right. Technology implementation. So one of our biggest things was how to use intraoral scanners. We got really good at that in teaching the dentists. And so now we do a lot of that, obviously remotely via COVID, but we can still, we've actually found that that helping them out is still, it still works. And we can still use that expertise to give ourselves an edge in the marketplace. And finally, educating doctors about the benefits of going digital. That's education is one of the biggest pieces that that all laboratories really, and that we're focusing on going forward is big on education and online education. Hopefully you'll get to see a little bit of that tonight. Guys, do you think I covered everything? Is there anything that I left out maybe I should touch upon?
I don't think so. I think
No.
we have some more stuff.
All right, let's get into it.
So as Aries touched on, one of the things that we do is try to educate doctors. And so one way we do this is going to different events, and we go to a bunch of different types. So we go to smaller study clubs with about 20 or so different dentists. We go to large conferences with thousands of dentists, and we go to anything kind of in between. And so the purposes of us attending events apart from education is to kind of gain a large following. And then with this following, we can then do the education. So we can kind of reach out to those who know us and just kind of give them tips and tricks that we have seen like from a lab's perspective. So this particular event that you're seeing right here is called Voices of Dentistry, and it's a podcasting summit. So a large group of dental influencers gathered to discuss important topics in the industry and kind of just gaining different perspectives from each other. And so I was there, and a lot of different, as I said, influencers in the industry were there, and we were able to actually get on a podcast, which some of you might have heard, for Howard Ferran. It's called Dentistry Uncensored. And so we're able to kind of just use that to kind of talk about things that we see to help dentists in their practice. And so podcasting and things like that, like social media, are becoming really popular in dentistry. They're a way for everyone in the industry, like labs, dentists, dental suppliers, scanning companies, hygienists, all to kind of connect and really like share information experiences with each other. And so this was, again, just one of them.
If you're in the Phoenix, Arizona area, that's a great conference to go to every year to kind of figure out what's meet people, network within the industry, and see who's up and coming.
Yeah, and so what I'm going to go through right now is our perspective of fabricating a crown. So I'm sure many of you have chatted with doctors, and so you know that on the doctor's end, they're going to prep the tooth. So they're gonna shave away all that decay that they need to get rid of, and they're going to form a ledge, and that ledge is going to be the margin for the crown to then sit on. And then, or if you're doing an implant, then you have to extract the tooth. Then, so the doctor will either take a traditional physical impression. And so in the past, that has been when you would use the putty material to form a mold of the patient's mouth. You would then ship that to the lab. We would pour up the model, fabricate everything, and then send it back. So what actually has been one of the newer technologies is the intraoral scanning, which Aries touched on. So this is an intraoral scanner. It takes thousands of HD photos, basically, of the patient's teeth. And then it's able to send that to the lab, and it can literally be sent right then and there. So it's really awesome. It's really fast because we can get the case right away versus having to wait for the case be sent through the mail, the potential that it's lost with FedEx or something. And so we actually have a video of, this is the video of it that we wanted to share. And so this is Aries scanning his mouth. So usually you'll run along the occlusal, and we recommend doing the occlusal surface first because it has the most surface area, and then rolling to the lingual, and then over to the buccal. And so you can see that within a couple of minutes, you've been able to capture one full arch. And then you can do the same thing on the upper. And then you can also capture the bite, the occlusion of the scan. And so then once everything is sent, and you've captured everything, filled out the digital lab slip, we receive it on our end, and we're able to design everything digitally using that CAD/CAM software, so computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing. And so in this last scan, Aries is going to capture the patient's bite or his bite. And so you would just have the patient bite down, and then you would slowly bring the scanner forward in an S-like motion. And now you've captured the bite super easy without even having any of that putty material. So we'll do it for the other side. And so now he's captured everything needed. He'll review his scan. You have the option to check clearance and everything at that point before you send it. But that is a little preview of the new way. How do I present this? All right. And so then also one of the benefits of intraoral scanning is also the ability to do a pre-prep scan. So this is a scan of the teeth before they've been prepped, as the name, alludes to. And so this is really great for patients that wear partials or are in Invisalign or some other retainer, or if the doctor wants to mimic the exact anatomy of the patient's tooth. So they can take a scan beforehand and then prep the tooth and take another scan. And so then when we receive it on our end, we're able to overlay the two and design a restoration that is going to mimic that original tooth. And so this is really awesome also because you don't have to mail anything in. The patient can continue to wear their partial. They don't have to worry about it being lost or about being without it for a couple of weeks. So this is just another one of the examples of what makes intraoral scanning also super awesome. And so then on our end, we receive the case and step one is designing it. So Eric is going to go through a case. It's actually an implant case, and he's going to walk through and narrate it. And I'll get through to that. All right.
All right, so this is a little bit more complex side of it. It's very technical. Definitely can be a little overwhelming, but I think it's good to see. It's a real case. So what we do is we receive the scan, and right off the bat, it's imported into our CAD system, and we are able to refine the scan data. So there's a lot of scan data that isn't necessarily the actual arch. So we check the scan data, we switch from color to gray so it's easier for us to see. Here it's just still refining the scan data. And then what we'll do from here is we trim up the arch. This just takes a few seconds here. That way it gets rid of a lot of the discrepancies for building the model, aligning the occlusal table. This helps orientate it when it comes to 3D printing, as well as orientating the view access in the CAD system. I chose a rather difficult case. It's not a pretty crown like you would see. This is a real life case for a patient that's missing a bunch of teeth. And then from here, what we do is we trim the scan data, clean it up. It's a little bit longer of a video. I asked them to speed it up so it wasn't so slow, but this is a real-time design from a few days ago. Once we clean up the scan data, it just makes it easier for the manufacturing of the model. So printing the model, we have multiple 3D printers here at Paramount. They range from anywhere from, 100 plus K per year, or for one of the printers down to 2,500. Some printers you'll see in dentist office, as well as big industrial printers. And majority of our cases that we receive nowadays are digital, which is a big trend that's happened in the past few years from dental laboratory industry. Before, it took a lot longer. We would have to pour up a model. It would take about a day for the model work, and then another day to get it all cleaned up and ready to scan and design. The same day we receive the scan, we can actually go right into design. So a little bit about this implant. It's a Biomet 3i implant. So they used instead of a scan body as a typical scan body for an implant case, they used an encode healing abutment. Encode healing abutment is pretty complex. It's a scan of a healing abutment that has codes on it, which tells our CAD system where the implant depth is, along with the implant position. It helps orientate it into the CAD software. So right now it takes a little longer in our CAD system because we have thousands of manufacturers and scan bodies. So the computer has to pull all these files in order for us to select the right one to align. And then what we do is we tell the computer where the codes are located. So There's usually flats or grooves on these abutments that'll tell different height, different diameter, different width. And then the computer, once we've identified the codes, it'll give us a list of the actual healing abutment that was used. So on the left-hand side, we select all the possible codes. And then because I know the codes, I told the computer it's a 343, which means it's a 3mm restorative platform by 4mm height. And then we align it. And then once we've got the alignment set, we double check it with a 2D cross section. I think our faces are over it, but we just verify that the actual alignment is correct, because if it is off or not correct, then in the mouth, the position of the implant and abutment and crown will not be accurate. So once we've verified that it is correct, which we're just triple checking in this sense, we do this with every single implant case, and then we'll move forward from here, checking everything, making sure it aligns. And then from here, the computer actually puts a replica of the implant at the correct XYZ axis into the digital model. And then from here, we generically mock up what we want the tooth in the position we want it to be, the location, check it with the opposing, just orientating the tooth to help for the abutment design. This will be a screw retain case, not your ideal screw retain case, because the screw axis hole is very close to the buccal wall. But these are the type of cases that we see in the industry. You know, a lot of times the general dentist refers the patient out to an oral surgeon or a specialist to place the implants, and the specialist or the oral surgeon can only place where the bone is good. So here we are going to build the general shape of a root of a tooth without trying to displace too much tissue. Obviously, you can see this implant, the tissue is receded quite a bit, and we can't lower the margins as low as we would like. So we're going to be close to tissue level here. The red that you see around the margin area that keeps popping up is the limitations of the manufacturer, which is Biomet 3i. They won't allow us to move forward unless we're in their limitations. So it gets really difficult. A doctor will say, I'd like the margin to be 1mm subgingival, but the implant interface isn't even 1mm subgingival, which means the margin would have to be supragingival. But it's pretty cool to see the technology advance digitally. Before we used to hand wax these type of things, and now we do it all on the computer. Everything is designed modelless. I've spoke to a bunch of doctors recently to check up on some of these implant cases, and they're not making any adjustments seating these cases. So everything's designed digitally, 100%, and their fit is amazing. So every time you see that bright red, that means it's out of the limitations. So we're just building almost like a prep tooth in a sense. We want to create enough substructure for the crown to have support. Doesn't necessarily matter which type of material. All the materials need to have a sufficient amount of support. If a doctor's using a stock abutment, it's not as effective as a custom abutment where we can support the structure more along the lines mesial, distally, buccal, lingually, and you don't have to worry about fracturing or porcelain shattering. So we adjust some of our settings on the left-hand side here for our model list. This means we design the abutment, we send it to the manufacturer, and then at the same time we manufacture the crown. And then when it comes in, we just pretty much stain and glaze and it's done. We're adding a retention groove for the retention of the crown. That way, this will be going out as a one-piece screw retained. So we will, in the lab, cement the two units together, the abutment and the crown, and the doctor would receive it as a one piece. it's telling us the abutment design is a little too thin. So what we'll do is we'll actually thicken up a little bit of the material. So this abutment material will be titanium. If it was zirconia, it would have to be much larger. The doctor should expect to have to maybe use a laser to seed it because we'd have to impinge a little tissue in order to support it. But with titanium, we could get away with a little bit less. It's going through the margin detection, which because we created the margin ourselves with the custom abutment, we don't have to adjust the margin at all. We check and see if there's any undercuts, which there is an undercut right there. So we will remove the undercut manually with the sculpting tool. And adjust it until the undercut is gone. Okay. And then we adjust our cement gap and spacer for our modelless fit, which means when it comes in, there's no adjusting. We don't have to adjust any internals of the crown. And then now we'll go to the final crown design, which you can see that the patient has a deep bite. We've opened the digital articulator. We're just confirming that the bite is accurate and that there are, points of contact. And then we'll adjust the crown to the actual occlusion. All the red on the occlusal table is high marks, so the occlusion is high in those points. So we'll manually morph the tooth. The CAD software will give us a general idea of what a tooth should look like per each tooth indication, but in a sense, it doesn't necessarily go to everybody's mouth. So every case is custom designed to each patient. And we'll design approximately 100 abutments every week. So we do a high volume of implant cases. And I'd say 80 to 90% of those cases are all modelless. So at this point, takes a pretty skilled designer to know the functionality and anatomy of a tooth and how a tooth works, as well as what a tooth should look like. And then on top of it, we have to train our designers to also know every tool on the side. There's, as you can see, there's a lot of different tools to choose from. And we pretty much take our time training designers, or we only bring in pretty skilled designers. It's 3Shape. This is a 3Shape software, which is probably the most used software for CAD in dental laboratory. It's pretty user-friendly, and a lot of designers out there in the dental laboratory industry know how to use it. As you can see, this case here, due to the draw of the implant against the adjacent tooth contact, there's a big, it would be a black triangle in the mouth. So in a sense, this doctor could have uprighted the contact a little bit more and we could fill that a little bit better. But in this case, we have only what we have been sent to work with. The computer does that thing, PowerShell, so it saves the data. So we're just pretty much going through, making some more final touches. Definitely not a pretty crown. This is more of a functional design. And then what we'll do from this point is we will start to run it through the lateral movements on the articulator. I think right now he's going to do some of the occlusal contact for our modelless fit. So he's subtracting to the opposing, and then we'll smooth it into place. And then we'll run the articulator to see all the high points when the patient's running through their excursions. So these are fully functional articulators on the CAD software. Back when I first started working in the lab industry about 10 years ago, everything was done by hand. We had hinge articulators. You had to clap the articulator against articulating paper and adjust the high spots. With these, we can use, Ivoclar articulators, Hanna articulators, some of these SAMS articulators. Some of the articulator functions in here are what a $2,000 or $3,000 articulator would allow us to do on a bench. And then, we can choose to adapt the design to the excursions, which is pretty much what he's doing. We're just fine tuning it at this point. And because that deep bite, the occlusion on the buccal cusp is non-existent, but at this point, it has to be just a functional design. It's not a aesthetic design. We're going to adjust the contact for our modelless contact settings. In the past, what we would do is we would mill it. Again, we would use some occlusion checker or contact paper, and we would place the crown on and off the model and then adjust it with a handpiece. And then today we don't have to do that because we're able to do that fully digital. As well as Aries was saying earlier, the adaptation to digital dentistry has been a big thing in the industry. Most labs today, if you were to walk into majority dental labs, they actually are still doing this by hand. Not a lot have fine-tuned the settings such as Paramount has, where we're not adjusting. If you were to walk through our laboratory and look at the hundreds of pans, majority of those pans don't have any models. It's just a crown. Everything's done on the computer, and then we just add the stain and glaze at the end. So we're just fine-tuning the last few things of the crown here, the contour. And then we're going to check the screw hole to ensure that the screw hole is not coming through the buccal. This is a little close to the incisal, but the doctor wants to keep it screw retained in this case, so we will have to thicken that area a little bit more to ensure that they can still receive a screw retained case, which they'll composite after when they seat the case. We're checking the draw one more time from the implant to the contact angle using the screw channel guide against the contact. If the contact was hanging over more to the distal, we would probably have to send it out as screw-mentable, which means the office receives it as two pieces, because if we send it as one piece, then they wouldn't be able to seat it. But in this case, the draw angle is okay, and we're able to proceed forward. The next step after this would be building the model, but we just finished the design itself there. And that's it.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, that was a long one.
That was great.
Thanks.
Eric was also on the 40 under 40 list, so congratulations, Eric. Just a little brag there.
Thanks, Eric. That was the first time I saw that, and congratulations again on that.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Eric's the best. All right, and so I don't know why I opened this again. So second step now is once everything
Whether
is
your
designed,
dental
we're going to
and
go ahead and mill it.
the DWS.
I'm going to turn the volume off because it's not necessary. And so you would put in a puck of whatever material you're using. So it could be zirconia, Emax, and then the design is sent to the mill and it will mill it out with all these little burrs.
So Paramount has multiple mills. We use Ivoclar's mill for the Emax. We have multiple roll-ins. There's a lot of different milling procedures in different laboratories as well as in office.
And so then your finished product is going to be a tooth. To presentation. And so then that next step is to stain and glaze it. So this is where we're going to make it look actually like the patient's adjacent teeth. One of the great benefits of technology is that doctors can take photos of the case of the patient's teeth in a couple different lightings with maybe some different shade tabs. And they can send that to us so that we can look at it while we're staining and glazing to best match the adjacent teeth. And this is some other stuff I wanted to go over, some stuff that you might not learn in dental school, but is very important on the lab side. So material selection. So it depends if it's an anterior or posterior tooth, the translucency, if the patient is a heavy biter, if they have a really dark stump shade. This will all play a role in the material selection. So I've listed a couple here that I'll just briefly run through. Zirconia, this is a really strong material. It's going to be very opaque, but it's going to be also very strong, and so it'll last a while. And then Emax, this is going to be much more translucent, but it's also going to be very weak. And so this will also have some gray undertones, but it'll be very aesthetic for someone that has very translucent teeth. And then HTZ, this is an aesthetic zirconia. So it kind of is the best of both worlds between zirconia and Emax. It's stronger than Emax, but it is less strong than monolithic zirconia. And it does have some of those aesthetic properties. So that would be a good option if you need something a little bit stronger, or if you need something aesthetic for a bridge, because we cannot fabricate Emax bridges. It's just going to break. And so those were a couple materials. And then also over scanning, I wanted to touch on, since we've been talking about intraoral scanning and the digital side of everything. So this is something that we see often on our end, and this will lead to distortions. So I have a couple examples here of some contact distortions. And so this is going to affect the designs when we're designing everything, because that area is a little unclear. So we're not sure exactly where that adjacent contact really is. So over scanning, typically a lot of offices, if it's a really sensitive case, they're going to want to spend a lot of time getting the scan perfect. But in actuality, it does the exact opposite, because now you have a bunch of images overlaying on top of one another. So it actually makes reality more distorted. So this is something that we see a lot on our side. We can smooth it and proceed with everything, but it may lead to adjustments chairside for the doctor. And then Aries is going to go through some trends within the industry.
All right, I'm up. So getting back to general trends within the industry, I think you might also find this pretty interesting. So we'll talk about the consolidation of laboratories and the consolidation of dental practices, and then general trends within the dental practice. So we see a big trend of consolidation, meaning going from decentralized to centralized, and across many levels in the industry. And so the first one is dental practices are consolidating. And so you might have heard about this trend that DSOs, dental service organizations, the Heartlands of the world, the ones that own 1,000, 1,300 offices, the Aspen Dentals of the world that own all of these offices. And they're not necessarily, you can't necessarily spot them. When they buy office practices, they'll buy local practices that says, Johnstown Family Dentistry or something like that, but they're owned by a corporation, a giant corporation. And so corporate dentistry is growing. It's growing very quickly. There are a lot of PE funds and things like that that have invested in dentistry. Dentistry is really hot regarding investment right now. But a lot of the funds and a lot of the people that I've talked to, I've heard about, and they say that it might be in the ninth inning of investment in dental practices, meaning that they don't know how it could go much higher in terms of valuations and things like that. That there's been so much, and that at some point there'll be a retraction. Well, it'll be very interesting to see the numbers that come out this year about what COVID's doing, to see if there is a retraction in that. Anyway, what that means for future dental students is that when you're at dental school, what you're probably going to think of is there's only corporate practices, because those are the people with the money that can that pay in order to get into dental schools. And so dental schools they'll say, I'll pay $8,000, $10,000. I've got all this cash, and I'll send in my my people to pitch it. Whereas your neighborhood practice, maybe it's a older dentist that's built up their practice and they're looking to sell, and they're looking to find a young person straight out of dental school that wants to buy a practice and get into it. Those people aren't coming to dental school. You don't hear about them. And so what tends to end up happening, probably for the worse, is that you only hear from the corporations. Now it's a great route to go if that's what you want to do. But I know a lot of people, I just like to echo the route that a lot of people don't take, just because I think that it's worth hearing about. A lot of people don't hear about it. Is that there's tons of great finds out there. The market is not super efficient. There are people with great practice that are looking to sell, and you just need to go out there and find them and start talking to people, because they're not coming in. They're not spending $10,000 just to come in and buy pizza for dental students and to pitch you to buy the practice. They're just out there and they're kind of waiting. So anyway, that's happening. It's as far as and even the smaller dental practices. So if you own your own practice, a lot of private practice dentists are starting to own maybe 2 or 3 practices. So it's going more of the route of, instead of having everybody own their own practice, maybe one person is more of an owner, and you have people that are interested just in doing dentistry. So people that are interested in being associates, and they're saying, you know what, I don't actually want to be involved with all of the administrative portion. I don't want to have to deal with all of these problems of marketing, et cetera. Like, I just got into this just to be a dentist. I like doing dentistry. I like I like cutting crowns. I like doing that. I like talking with patients. And that's really what I want to do. I want to also take my time off. I don't want to be working all the time, which if you're owning a business, you better be and you're deep in debt from dental school, you're working all the time for the next 10 to 20 years. And if you don't want that, you just want to maybe make more of a salary and you want to have more time off, then that's a route you can go now. So that's one of the big trends. General dentists are also keeping more procedures in-house. So technology, the increase in technology is allowing general dentists to do more. That's been a bigger trend, specifically with implants, so placing an implant, as well as orthodontics. So general dentists So you have orthodontists, you have oral surgeons. They'll go to 3 years of extra schooling. You have to be in the top 10% of your class. You go into more debt, et cetera. But of course, when you get out, you obviously make more money. But traditionally, there has been more a lot of business for that. Well, some of these there is now less business essentially for orthodontists. A lot of the easy cases are being done by general dentists. It's not to the point where, like, of course, you don't go to orthodontists. People still have orthodontists, but you got to be like the good orthodontist in town and have like a good practice and all that type of stuff. It's not necessarily you go into it and you're made type of thing. Technology allows the general dentists to do Invisalign, do a lot of these other companies, and so you can instead of referring that patient out, instead of saying, you know what, I can't really do this, you're going to have to see a specialist, go see Dr. XYZ, an orthodontist. So you actually, you know what, stay in house. We can do that. It'll cost this much. It's, maybe it's a little bit cheaper and we'll do it this way. It's a very easy case. I can do that for you. I'm experienced. Same thing with implants, the same pitch, the same deal with implants. And that's empowering the general dental practice, which is good. I don't think it's necessarily good or bad if I had to put a value judgment to it, because the patients technically should be getting the same level of care in each scenario. Of course, the orthodontists are going to be better trained, so is the oral surgeons. But I don't know, maybe it'll cost more. Maybe certain patients can't afford it and things like that. So those are some of the big trends within the industry and some of the things that we deal with on a daily basis and we see on a daily basis. And we're always dealing with this stuff. We're always looking for, people to intern and to join the ranks. And as we're a growing company, we're always interested in that. Yeah, that's about it. That's the next slide.
So if you guys want to follow us on our social media accounts, we have an Instagram and we have Facebook. This is also our website if you want to kind of check us out a little bit more. But as I mentioned earlier, like social media and podcasting are becoming way more popular in the dental industry. It's kind of growing every day. And dentists are using it as a way to connect with other dentists and also to connect with their suppliers and their labs. And we as a lab are also really grateful to have this resource and the opportunity to use it, because not only can it connect us with new doctors that we don't work with, but we can also build up a personal connection with our existing clients. As we do work with clients across the country, we don't always have that kind of personal interaction with them. And so this and events, they kind of help us build that up. And so they can kind of just see what we're up to and like comment and reach out in many different ways apart from just emailing us or calling us like used to be the main way. So we really like to also use the platform to educate our doctors, as I said earlier. So something that we're working on right now is an educational series. We really like to focus on the latest trends in the digital industry. And so the picture on the right is actually a link to a live surgery that one of our doctors did. And he was working with Nobel, which is an implant company. And so it was virtual, because of COVID, but basically you could kind of view him do this guided surgery from start to finish. And he kind of talked through everything he was doing. So if this is something that you were interested in as a dentist, you could see someone who's experienced do it, just so you can kind of know the steps involved and what to expect if you do want to get into that. And so we like to provide resources like this. And then a picture on the left, shout out to Eric again, 40 under 40, him and Philip. Philip's also a really amazing technician and resource that we have at the lab. They're both superstars. We're really grateful to have them. Such an amazing team. So we like to do a little shout out to our employees as well when they're spectacular. And another thing for the educational series I meant to touch on is something called Smile Design. And so this is a process that's becoming really popular in dentistry. And it's a way for patients to see what their teeth would look like before they go through the process. So you can imagine if you were really kind of unhappy with your front teeth and wanted to transform them, it's kind of a big process and a big commitment. And so doctors can now, through their labs, offer this process where they could picture what their teeth would look like before they have to go in and prep them, as Rachel said earlier, where you take the burrs and kind of shave them down. So this way, like, we can send them a digital version and then something that actually helps them physically try it in and see what it would look like on top of their teeth. So this is just one example of a process that's becoming really popular and something we would kind of highlight. So we're constantly looking for ways to help educate doctors and figure out ways to connect them with different resources. So that's why we're building up our social media. And if you guys, again, want to follow us, there we are.
Awesome. And so that was the end of what we had prepared. So we did want to leave some time to answer any questions.
Of course. Thank you so much for the informative session. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the Q&A. Do you learn about dental technology during school training or afterwards?
So I went to a trade school after high school to be a dental technician. This was, 15 years ago. A lot of the programs are far and few between nowadays, but most technicians today learn on the job. So a lot of labs have a training program set up where you start at an entry level, but schooling, when you come across a technician that has schooling for dental technology, it's a little refreshing to see. So for me personally, I did go to school for 2 years for dental technology.
Now for I know there's a lot of dental people who want to go into dental school. Is there some sort of training that they get in terms of dental technology, or is that more set aside for people who go to dental tech school?
So most doctors, once you become a resident, you will probably spend some time practicing in a lab. So I grew up, my mother works for the University of Connecticut in dental, and a lot of the residents, when you're in your residency, spend a lot of time in the laboratory building a crown. And especially with where the technology is going nowadays with in-lab scanners and stuff, it is definitely something that they should be introducing you to in school before the time you graduate. But if not, I would suggest maybe doing a residency so you can learn that portion of it.
Thank you. Let's see. How much is the demand in this area? I heard that some dentists have their own dental lab.
There's very few practices as a percentage of the whole. I'd say less than 1%, maybe 0.5% or less, that have their own dental laboratory. Some practices, I think around the rate is maybe 8% of practices have an in-house mill where they will mill crowns. They'll mill single units in-house, 2 units in-house. So that, whereas scanners, the adoption is around 40%. So they start at the same time, the scanner and the mill. The mill has only gone to maybe a 5 to 8% adoption rate, whereas the scanner's gone to 40 and is set to go to 80 right now. And a scanner will help you, is essentially designed to go to the lab. So you scan it and then you send it to the laboratory. Dentists do not, as far as the current technology stands, dentists do not want to take time designing it themselves, because you saw that design process. You saw how long it took. They don't want to be doing that, and they don't want to be making a patient wait in the chair. They want to maximize their chair time. So get patient in the chair, do what they're good at, which is prep teeth, and then go get the patient out and get another patient in there. They don't want to be sitting there doing that or trying to train up one of their assistants to do it, because that assistant might do maybe 30 crowns a month, whereas a technician does 50 crowns a day and gets really, really good at it. And so you're going to get a better level of quality from that. So I think as far as general, like, is the industry going away or anything like that anytime soon due to technology, that we don't see that happening at all. We see that the dental technician being more empowered by increases in technology going forward, being able to essentially do more cases on a daily basis.
Thank you. That's very interesting. I'm curious, with all this technology, what procedures do you still do by hand, or which are necessarily by hand?
So most labs, if you were to do a census of most labs, they do a lot of the procedures to this day still by hand. If you have a lab that's been around for 20 years, it's probably harder for them to change and adapt to the new technology. I will tell you this: in the past, we used to hand wax up teeth for diagnostic wax ups or for what we would call a smile design today. Today, all that's done digitally, and instead of waxing it, we'll print a 3D printed model. So I'd say almost all of the process is done digitally today. On a different spectrum of it, something that Paramount doesn't really necessarily do is dentures. Dentures, most majority of dentures in the industry are still hand waxed up. There are some labs that have adapted the technology and set teeth digitally and then print or mill denture base and denture teeth. But for most of the crown and bridge, if it's a digitally advanced laboratory, everything is done digital. And then there are your other labs that are opposite spectrum that'll hand wax and cast. But pretty much everything at Paramount is done digitally. We'll mill the wax and cast it for our PFMs. So we've adapted the digital, but then there's other labs that will hand wax and cast, still pour models, stuff like that. So it really is it's a wide range throughout the industry.
I know that Rachel was saying that some dentists, they send you their impressions like to mail to pour. I know that the doctor I shadow, he says it's like it's more preferred to pour the model as soon as possible with the alginate. I think the material is called alginate, instead of waiting a couple of days to pour it because it starts shrinking.
Correct.
Is that an issue?
That's correct. So for alginate, it needs to be poured right away because of the shrinkage factor. But again, as we are discussing, some of the material advancements throughout the industry allow you to get 3 days before some alginates shrink, or maybe even some that never shrink. But for the most part, for a crown and bridge implant, it's polyvinyl, and it has a light body and heavy body, and that does not shrink. So it really depends on what type of thing you're trying to restore or what you're trying to manufacture. But for the most part, if you are working with alginate, it's always best to pour the model prior
As soon as possible. Okay.
Yeah, as soon as possible.
Awesome. Thank you. Are there any specialties within this field?
Yes. So there are lots of specialties within this field. In Paramount, as an example, we have printing technicians. They specialize just in 3D printing. We have support staff that specialize in sending to manufacturers, following up. Then there's specialists like me, particularly, which is I specialize in implant and then customer service. So I case plan and treatment plan some of the larger cases, as well as we have milling technicians, wax metal technicians, and then ceramists. So a ceramist is a technician that specializes in just building and stacking and layering porcelain. And then there's also stain and glaze technicians. So there are a lot of different specialties in the field. If you were to talk to some technicians they do like all on fours. So they'll visit the office and they'll convert dentures right there chair side. So the day the implants are placed, the patient can walk out with a denture. But yes, there are lots of different specialties.
Thank you. And it looks like we have time for one more question. Let's see. Does the dentist have any say in the design process?
So I guess I'll answer this one too to wrap it up. So we do offer design approval for a lot of cases. Any of our larger anterior cases, what we do is we create a web link through exocad design software, which allows them to click on the link and view a 3D modeling of the design as well as what the final restoration will look like. Or if we need to, we could send JPEGs or photos, but I have some local doctors in California here that'll come in and I'll review a surgical guide plan with them and we'll modify the design chair side. I've also had patients come in with their doctor, and I'll design a crown right in front of them, so that way the patient has say in what the final looks like. So yes.
Thank you. And sadly, it looks like that's all the time we have for today's session. I want to thank the team from Paramount for joining once again. Everyone, please make sure to go follow them on social media. Their Instagram is Paramount Dental Studio. And I also want to thank all our viewers for tuning in. And on that note, I hope everyone has a great rest of their night, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Great. Thank you.